let's head southeast. Let's just start an intro here. Welcome back again, friends, to another episode of Tactical Enlightenment. Our YouTube channel is dedicated to all things Bannerlord related. Welcome back to our Battanian campaign here, and we're going to jump right in today. We are going to head southeast to continue to expand our fledgling kingdom here, but we are going to release, I think we'll do this guy here, Bitter Draft. We're going to release this guy here with some armies to help defend the homeland. We're going to head southeast and start terrorizing the Western Empire. We just took a couple castles. I don't think I'll include the film for either of those. My narration was kind of flat. I hadn't really got some caffeine going yet today, and they were rather dull, drab castle sieges. Now, we're going to start doing this more and more. I'm going to take a look at his troops here, give him a few more cavalry, steal some of his better troops, because we need them for the foray to the southeast. We don't actually have a lot of cavalry. It's nice to give cavalry to your player clans and your player clan members because, of course, they can move around the battlefield and the campaign map faster. Very important. They also do better generally in auto-resolve with some cavalry, so I like to try to give them 30 or 40, but I don't really have it right here. So maybe that's something we need to start anticipating, is gathering some more cavalry for our clan leaders as they wander the world here. Now, I'm hoping he goes immediately and starts killing all these raiders, right? These raiders are sacking all of our villages. Hopefully this guy goes up there and teaches them a good lesson. He's got twice as many troops, and you just sort of, you know, you're hoping these guys can be a net positive asset instead of just a liability running around, getting captured and shit like that. We'll see how it goes. We're not going to stress too much about stuff like that in this campaign, but we're going to continue to talk about how to optimize your player clans. Now, this guy right here continues to sort of try to factor into decisions and stuff like that. It's kind of irksome because, of course, we're not giving the Jawals any cities or anything like that. It's not like we trust these scumbag mercenaries, trust them so far as I can throw them. And Jawals are pretty heavy, so I probably can't throw the guy very far. And look at this, right? How beautiful is that? It's almost like you're sending your kid off to first grade. You know, you're a little nervous. You're a parent, you know, just sent your kids off to the first day of middle school or whatever, and you're a little bit nervous, right? And then you hear that they got a B+, and you're like, all right, I'm proud of my boy, right? That's how I feel about these player clan armies. You set them up, you spec them, you turn them into lords, you do all this yourself, you put equipment on them, and then you send them off into the world and kind of hope they don't get massacred. There's a little element of pride there. I guess pride comes before the fall. I don't know if he's going to fall or we're going to fall, but there's something like that in the Bible. I don't know. I don't read the Bible too much these days. But we're going to continue to try to show you guys how, at least I think, they're best used. We're going to just kind of skip through a lot of these, although I haven't seen this one before. There's a gold rush here, so I am kind of blowing through these because I think I've made my point clear. These need to be more profound to the campaign instead of happening left and right. Otherwise, we just get drowned with analysis via paralysis, or the other way around, or however the fuck that goes. Basically, these are just so insignificant, I don't really care. I'm not really worried about this guy's reputation. Maybe in a long campaign, they'll be more impactful, but I'm really hoping they amplify the degree of those, right? In other words, how much they matter. Now, he did his job, right? And not only that, he suffered 3 casualties, right? So he kicked some major ass. I love it, right? We gave him some good troops. He's specced out well. I think he's level 22 or 21 already. And we've been cruising right along in this campaign. Now, there may be some boring parts here. We're going to do a little bit of siege today. We'll probably have some open field battle. We'll probably smash the teeth in of our enemies. At this stage, our army of 485, and it should be growing, right? We're going to take villagers, sons and daughters all the way through here. What we got going on here? Somewhere under siege. Dingo Tamail. Where is that shit? Well, I don't remember. I think it's over here. I think it's a Battanian village. Here it is. All right, so he's going there now, right? Look at this guy. He's paying the bills over there. He's just sacking all these guys that are attacking our villages. Love it, right? These guys, you know, if you set them up well, they can have some extended success. Now, it didn't take long for us to run into an army here, and it looks like he's still fleshing out the ranks. He'll probably run from us at this stage, and I want a battle here. We're going to be fighting outnumbered most of the time for the rest of this campaign. That's because, of course, we're focused on a very powerful doom stack of highly highly proficient, well-designed, units in our army here. The big three, really: Imperial Sergeant Crossbow, Battanian Wildling, Battanian Fiend Champ. We'll mix in some horse, some Jav Cav, a little bit of strong infantry here. I thought that was him getting captured. That's just one of the dipshit Jawals. And this is the kind of army that you just flatten everything in sight once you have some good tactics. This will be interesting. He's going to have almost 900. We'll see if he comes in attacks. He is. And you sort of pity these foes. I mean, they're pixels. It doesn't matter at all with his English accent and his helmet here. I'd take the helmet right off him. Give us your helmet, and then we won't kill you all today. No? Okay, well, we'll just kill you all today then. We'll continue to talk tactics. I've got all kinds of things in my mind that we can talk about to keep you guys mildly entertained. I've been brushing up on my English history. I saw a note about the people in England that are still sort of pro-royalist, which kind of surprises me. This is interesting. Slings has at least one perk, right, that falls under the perk tree. We'll look at perks more later on. Not really going to spend time at the beginning of an episode doing it. I think it's kind of boring, and I just don't think it's the kind of thing that most people want to see. All right, so let's fly into battle here, but maybe we'll talk a little bit about how the English royal family is illegitimate, is just a bunch of usurpers. We'll talk about the English family and their royal history with these bunch of Hanover usurpers and shit like that. They're basically given the crown by the parliament. They're just basically assigned the crown. And I take it back, right? We had a battle recently that was like the most beautiful scene I'd ever seen. This is more beautiful. It's kind of amazing. It really does look like a supernatural scene, like something if someone painted it, people would stare at it for hours in the gallery. Maybe they wouldn't even buy it because they'd be so bedazzled by the beauty. I mean, we have this light coming through the sunset. It always seems like the sun is bright, and there's a myriad of different purple and blues and yellows and oranges and clouds and snow. It's rather overwhelming. It's kind of sensory overload. Like, it's the kind of thing, like I said, we might just be like, in the future, when there's a beautiful sunset outside, be like, that's nothing. I've seen a Bannerlord sunset. Real life is garbage. And they say, you don't want to be born in Alaska because anywhere else you ever lived, the rest of your life is ugly. It's one of those things, right? When you see this kind of beauty, every other battle. Anyways, I've gone into that enough. I do think it's going to have an impact, though. It's going to be interesting to see how that impacts people. Certainly enjoying it still, right? We're eating ice cream every single day. We're not sick of it yet, but at some point we might be. Now we've got just an absolute doom squad here. We probably have 100 Fiend Champs between our 3 or 4 armies here. We probably have 100 Wildlings between our 3 or 4 armies. We've got other elite troops. The javelins are going to go flying everywhere. We've got sharpshooters. Our character's starting to turn into a relative beast. And this poor Western Empire force is trudging uphill. It reminds me of the battle against the Sturgeons, right? Where they were coming uphill. They just don't have any chance on the planet. They're going to get melted before they even get to our troops. We can kite back. We've got 2 different divisions of skirmishers here just waiting my orders to kill everybody, right? They just fire and everything dies. It's bad enough on flat terrain, but ranged units going downhill, there's a big advantage to elevation in a situation like this. I think the javelin range at this kind of angle with this kind of steep slope is probably 50%. In other words, if normally they can throw their javelins 20 yards, here they're 30 yards or 30 meters if you prefer. So they're throwing it a long ways, right? They got like some long-armed wildlings here throwing deadly javelins all the way into the back ranks of the enemy. And the screen is amazing. Well, we just lost one to their lord, but it's just 95% death spam. And we're outnumbered 2-1, and it just means there's more foes for us to kill. We could be outnumbered 3 or 4-1 at this stage, and I wouldn't be too perturbed. In fact, if there's anything I'm too perturbed about, it feels kind of like we've beaten the campaign already. The enemy keeps on sending big armies at us, and there's not really that threatening, right? We're just sort of flattening everything in sight. And some guys would say, well, don't use fiends. Yeah, I agree. Typically, when we play campaigns, I try not to have a whole bunch of fiends. We're playing a Battanian campaign, though. If we're not going to use fiends when we play a Battanian campaign, I don't know when you would ever use them. Right, so we're going to use them here in this campaign, and I guess in a way it's going to illustrate how insanely powerful a Battanian army that's well honed can become, right? Just gun down their lord like he was just a peasant. We got some cavalry. I'm just sort of menacing the enemy because I want them stalled out right where they are, right? We've got the 8th Division behind them, just pounding them with javelins. There's a Lord haplessly fighting with one of our banner knights. Our army's not maxed, but it's sure damn close. It's probably 80% maxed. In other words, 80% tier 5, tier 6. It's at least 70%, right? It's going to get stronger even from here, but it's already unbelievably powerful. And at some point or other, we will start fighting battles where I use low-level troops for 2 reasons. One, to show you can still use low-level troops and these tactics work. But also, we want to upgrade our low parts of the army, right? If our whole army can be tier 4 and 5, we really are going to be unbeatable. You know, they're getting a few kills as they close with our archers, but this Western Empire force just died where they stood. We can charge here with our skirmishers, just the coup de grace, but yeah, they're mauled. I mean, they're getting 20 kills a battle. We're getting way more upgrades than the enemy's killing at this stage, which is always a superior, right in the face he got hit. It's a superior metric, right? If you're getting double or triple the upgrades to deaths, you're doing really well in Bannerlord. And we're certainly doing that. Although at this stage, we're not getting upgrades anymore because we're all maxed out, right? We got wildlings everywhere, Imperial Sergeant Crossbow, and I think the enemy just fled off the field. Their vanguard got insta-destroyed. I mean, it did take a minute or two, but it died without any benefit. Maybe they killed 20 or 30 in that battle. You know, and you sort of run out of things to talk about. It's so ugly. You know, this is for sure why we play mods, right? It's a little bit, I don't want to say it's boring, but we're just sort of throttling everything on vanilla Bannerlord. Now, how's that for a screenshot? We will use that for the screenshot for this episode. This is probably the most beautiful scene I've ever, beautiful, you know, cinematic landscape scene I've ever seen with this huge mountain in the background. It looks like the Matterhorn or the Eiger or something like that. One of those famous mountains in the Alps. There's snow, there's all these ray effects and sunshine, and 24 total losses. And a 10-to-1 upgrade to death ratio. So we are still upgrading a lot, right? We had a bunch of skirmishers that upgraded there, which is a terrifying prospect, right? We just had like I don't know, I didn't even see the kill ratio, but it was enormous. A huge army just tossed aside here, and we're getting stronger still, right? And we're getting troops for free. Although the puppeteer is probably the worst. I think they're tier 4 too, right? They're a terrible unit. It's a dude with it's a really bizarre unit. He's got like a cloak and a gigantic strong helm, and then the guy has no shield. For some reason, I guess he's got a really weak shield arm. He can't even carry a shield. He's just got, if I remember right, he's just got a sword. It's a pretty bad mercenary. Not one that I would choose. Heaven forbid we get Lake Rats in this campaign, or Skolderbroda. Skolderbroda would be better. Or Benny Zalal, right? If we get more javelins, it's already an aerial assault, right? Shock and awe, and it may get even more dynamic. We're not at war with like 4 or 5 kingdoms, so we can definitely add more mercenaries. It's harder when you're at war with a lot of kingdoms because, of course, their mercenaries won't talk to you. They're at war with you. Now, the AI has an advantage in that regard. What they can do basically is they can say, even if they're at war with you, they can snatch your mercenaries. I don't know how that works, but basically the mercenary can be in your army, and all of a sudden you'll be at war with the guy. They just take him from your army, and they disband from your army. It can happen right before a battle, and then you can get attacked. So I remain of the belief that needs to be fixed. It's something I've definitely put on the list of top 5 things that I would like Tail Worlds to work on, is fixing the mercenary process. Now, this dipshit did get captured, Vorard Bitter Draft, and that's, you know, it's sort of like a rite of what do they call that shit? A rite of a rite of passage. That's the word. It reminds me of the scene in Goodfellas where the kid, he's doing all the work for the mob, and he gets captured, right? He gets arrested selling illegal cigarettes or whatever he was doing. And they're not mad. In fact, he doesn't say a word. And so all the gangsters put money in his shirt and stuff like that. And they're like, you know, you got pinched, but you didn't rat. You didn't rat on us, right? Everybody's going to get pinched in that kind of line of work. They're basically saying you did it right? You took it like a man. You served your time you got bailed out, and you know you're essentially proving your loyalty. In a way, when these little player clan guys get captured, that to me that's like their rite of passage, right? Now they've seen defeat, they can get out there and fight. Of course, what it really is the dipshit AI getting into bad situations. A human player is much more prudent and careful than the AI. The AI will just barrel in, even though visibly there's other units that are going to join a battle and they'll get captured. They will still fly right in. And again, that's another thing that's probably hard for the AI coders to make realistic. But it is something that I would love to see them fix. All right, so Gursagos Castle here. You know what model this is, right? This is Veron Castle. This is Lavinia Castle, I think, is the same. There's 5 or 6 castles on the map that look like this. Onica Castle, I think, looks like this, and they're untakeable. So if you take this city, if you take Veron Castle in your campaign, what's nice about it is if you have to make a stand, say there's 2,500 enemies, you can, if you're lucky, you can make your stand at a location like this, where your odds of success are extraordinarily high. Right, you can probably win 10 or even 20 to 1 outnumbered in a castle like this. In fact, it's not going to happen in vanilla, but I would love it if 9,000 forces siege this, right? Because we would just capture them all, right? The whole fucking, the whole Western Northern Empire, all the empires together tried to siege this castle. They couldn't succeed, just because it's such a good defensive castle. Now, just going to help a little bit here on the margins of this, but I think we'll jump back to my little squirrel mind here and talk about the illegitimate House of Hanover, right? These fake kings and queens that are so pompous today in England. Of course, the royalists, the 3 of you watching the channel, are like, fuck you, man. They're salute the queen, right? Well, Queen Elizabeth II, right? These are royalty, right? You should be awed by the power of royalty. And of course, I know my history. Maybe they've got some fake history or something, or maybe I know the wrong history or something like that. But basically, if you know the history of it, the current, the current king, what is he, King Charles III or something like that? The current dipshit monarchy within Great Britain, they're all usurpers, or more accurately, they were given the throne by Parliament. It's something, of course, most Americans have no idea. Most Americans receive very poor education on our own history, right? I don't know why that is, but we don't get a lot of education. Maybe once you get to college, you start getting some pretty good history lessons, but most high school history classes are pretty mediocre. If you're a good history teacher and you're taking offense to this, good. And what I mean by that is hopefully you're a good history teacher, because we need more of you. History is critical. I think history is the foundation for philosophy. If you want to understand people and how the human brain works, what better study than hundreds of years of human behavior? Right? And we see the same thing over and over again. What do we see? We see corruption. We see desire for power. We see warfare. We see guys having 6 wives and 2 mistresses. I hate to say it's all bad. It's not all bad. There's plenty of altruism and positive attributes, but humankind is sort of a running farcical calamity over the last 1,000 years. It's revolution and corruption and seize power here and a violent coup here and some corruption and skullduggery over here and execute this guy and take his fucking kingship over there. And that's basically what the Parliament did with the previous king and queen of England. And let's just do a little history lesson, because you guys aren't, you don't need my narration here as we throttle this little castle. And I don't want to do a huge amount of editing and kind of say, okay, well, I'm going to narrate here and edit there. We'll just roll with this, right? We'll roll right through with this. Most people know Queen Elizabeth I, right? Queen Elizabeth II just died. She was 174 years old. She was succeeded by Prince Charles, right? King Charles now, I guess. Well, way long before that, the people that were in power were known as the Tudors, right? And this was Henry VII, Henry VII and Henry VIII. Henry VII was, I think, the first Tudor in like the late 1400s is probably the best my memory can say. As I get killed here giving my history lesson, doesn't really matter. This castle's ours. We might suffer a few more losses, but that's all right. So Henry VII was brilliant. He basically maneuvered the nobles into obedience and established pretty close to absolute monarchy within the location that we know today as England or the UK. Well, he was succeeded by the legendary Henry VIII, and I'm not going to spend too much time on Henry VIII other than to say he's an amazing character, and I don't mean in a good way. He's a wenching, executing, despicable, power-hungry jock who could throttle people when he was young on the battlefield and wrestled other kings, even though he got thrown to the turf by Francis. He was an audacious, very fascinating king, right? It's sort of just the right kind of guy made for TV. Anyways, so Henry VIII took over. It was a mess. And the big effect from his reign came the separation from the Roman Catholic Church. They wouldn't give the guy a divorce. He was very religious initially. He wanted the Pope to give him a divorce because back then, in order to have a legitimate wife, right, you couldn't just have a bunch of bastards that you had with mistresses and stuff like that. So the Catholic Church refused to give him a divorce. It was complicated. Ultimately, with some other people, he basically conspired to have England get away from the Catholic Church, and he became essentially the head of the church for England, which is as it is to this day, right? All kings and queens of Great Britain, the UK, are also in charge of the Anglican Church. I think that's what it's still called there. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm highly ignorant on a regular basis. So we'll do the best we can here as we try to play and talk about the interesting parts of history. Anyways, we won't spend too much time on it. Henry VIII gets England away from the Catholic Church. They separate. They have sort of a quasi-Catholic, quasi-Protestant religion in the 1500s. Elizabeth I takes over and does a pretty damn good job, right? By a lot of accounts, she was a great queen, a great leader of England. She was sort of notorious for vacillating or being deliberate, read hesitant. That's the negative word on decisions. But she thought things out and didn't want to act too quickly sometimes, most of the time. And a lot of the times it was beneficial for her. Now, we've got peace with Battania here because I want to basically fight some new opponents here, change the landscape a little bit, and I want to experiment more with the diplomacy system. I want an alliance at some point in this campaign. So one of my goals, of course, with this campaign is to experience some of the changes with 1.3. We're getting all the combat changes, we're getting all the fiscal changes, the events, the slingers and stuff like that, the stealth system. A lot of the stuff we're not going to dive too deeply into because it doesn't interest me, right? If you guys want to watch stuff about slingers and stuff I'm sure there's plenty of YouTube channels that cover it. And in 30 seconds, I can basically tell you that I don't think slingers are going to matter much after about, 1 year into the campaign. You're not going to be using slings at this stage of a campaign. The events, to me, need to be adjusted upwards, as I've already said, and stealth doesn't interest me at all. Now, I may do an entire campaign with stealth. In other words, focus on being, an assassin, brigand as much as we can. We might try to load the Forbury mod and some other mods to make it more dynamic. And maybe we will sneak around and stab guys and shake down nobles and do things like that. But that doesn't interest me very much right now. Bannerlord at its core, I think, still is a campaign world war type of situation. The core of the game, to me, is still the combat system. And going around in snowy forests, stabbing one guy at a time with a stealth system, it just doesn't inspire a huge amount of stimuli to my brain. All right, so I'm trudging along with my little English recap here. So the Tudors, basically, their line ended because Elizabeth did not have children. She did not marry. She never married. They wanted her to marry, but she realized as a woman that as soon as she married, whoever she married would start to take over power. She did have strong ministers. She had people basically helping her. She had a great spy. I can never remember the fellow's name, but she had a great spy captain. Of course, the movie is plenty of Hollywood. If you've seen the movie with, was it Kate Blanchett or whatever? It's a pretty good movie, but there's a lot of, Hollywood, we'll call it artistic license used in the movie. They basically compact 50 years of her life into a 2-hour movie. It can never, really flow correctly. But she was, she was an exemplary queen, and England started to really become potent under her rule, right? Pushed back the Spanish Armada, really started to establish some unity within the country after Bloody Mary. So what happens after that, right? She doesn't have kids. Well, there was basically, through the old system of, they would look at heirs and be like, who's the closest to so-and-so's uncle? And it was James the First. Now, this guy was a Scot. He was not from the UK. And right away, that sort of carried a negative connotation to the English people because, like it or not, people throughout almost all cultures have a little bit of xenophobia. Xenophobia, basically a discomfort around people that are not quite like you. Now, I'm trying to make it to this castle, but it's going to be close. So the English weren't thrilled about James the First. He was also on the fruity side, we'll call it. And back then, even though some people today are still intolerant to people who are not heterosexual, back then it was a mortal sin to not be, a strong, tough, muscular, manly king. And James the First was anything but a manly king. He was basically a fruity, art-loving pacifist. But he was a good king, and he had a series of children that eventually led to the downfall they were, I'll remember their last name eventually. Anyways, his family line, though, ended with the Great Revolution, and that's really what started the modern day English king and queen system, so to speak, right, where they were elected essentially by Parliament. And we will talk more about that. Let's get this battle on here as I try to remember the name. I can't believe I can't remember the name of, it's the Stuarts. That's what it was. So it's James the First, Charles the First, Charles the Second, and then James the Second is where it all crashed and burned. And not surprisingly, it was religion that caused it. In fact, religious divide. We'll get to that. Let's do some tactics here first. Let's dismember this Northern Empire force here. Better make sure we don't lose these battles here. Sometimes I fight okay when we're rambling on about history, and other times I just, it's hard to micromanage 8 divisions and remember shit like random things like the Stuarts. We've got a beautiful elevated area here. I think we can even position our troops here now. If not, we can position them close to here and race up to there. With our ranged units, we always want to have the enemy attack us, but we're also very happy to go kill them, which is the incredible advantage of range. From a strategic level, look at it this way. If you have a superiority of range, it's ultra deadly if the enemy sits in one spot, because you can simply surround them with protected archers until they have to charge, and then you pound them even worse. And if they charge you, which is also a good situation, then you can set up essentially death traps and all kinds of inverted V's and funnels to smoke the shit out of them while your units stand with their feet planted and the enemy's off balance and they get immolated. In other words, it's always better for your army to have lots of ranged units in Bannerlord, because no matter the scenario, you just have a huge advantage. And I think that's another one of the points of this campaign, is to show you sort of the unbalance and also how ridiculously powerful a well-designed and well-oiled ranged machine can be. Again, there's no mods here making our army stronger. We're playing on the hardest difficulty, and in fact, we're sort of speed running this campaign. It's not like we're 20 years into the campaign and this is the son, who's level 52 or something like that. This guy is, we're 12 hours into this campaign, something like that, and we are just starting to shred everything to pieces. Our army's probably big enough to handle 4 of these armies at the same time. And hopefully we get some real challenges here. Otherwise, we're just going to have to resort to history lessons. You guys are free to leave, plenty of feedback. I always accept feedback, even negative feedback. You can be like, you don't know English history at all, you dipshit. Quit rambling about stuff. I just want to learn. I just want to listen to guys scream in combat. You guys can leave criticism. I would ask you be polite with it, right? Let's not trash each other or me. But if you don't like something, sometimes the music's too loud or something, I need that feedback. Otherwise, how would I know how to improve, right? Now, we're going to be, a little bit conserving of our ammo here, because it's taking the enemy a little while to move up. But with the being champs, you don't really have to conserve ammo, right? They have tons of arrows. And the wildlings have 10 plus javelins, right? I think they max out at 12 or something like that. There's some perks, I think, that give them a few extra javelins. And collectively, it's just, it's a rain of fire, right? And I didn't realize it before, but that's the name of our clan, and it actually kind of does make sense from it. Everything running at us just as they get skewered. Cavalrymen, infantry, the enemy archers get skewered the worst because they don't even have shields. And again, one of the nicest parts about it is the versatility. You're starting to get overwhelmed. Square those skirmishers. Shoot them with archers. Once the enemy's off them, even if it's temporary, kite back and unleash javelins. To have that ability to basically go from amazingly powerful offense to defense in 2 seconds. There's not much like that in Bannerlord besides these, these wildlings. The sharpshooters and the sergeant crossbow both sort of have that ability. They're lethal, shooting long range 1 minute, and then they're in a defensive square the next. That's really tough. But the wildlings are way at the top of the list. Now this army we attacked, and we're just dragging their infantry along here as they get torched from the side. I mean, it's shooting gallery. And any army that we attack is usually going to be, and what I mean by that is that they don't want to engage us, is usually going to be just flat out exterminated. If the AI is going to defeat this army, it's going to have to be when we're in a weakened state or with just a gigantic army, 3,000, maybe 2,500 or something like that. Because this fucking guy here, this army otherwise, wow, this guy here, we're drawing quarter on this guy, he's mine. The AI continues to fight better, but this army is just silly strong. Right? We've got ammunition for days. The enemy gets melted. These are good troops too, and they just fall on their face. Now we can shoot a few in the back here as we reset. That's the other advantage, right? You have no urgency to move up when you have this kind of a ranged assault, right? We've got archers and skirmishers. And you just tell guys to hold fire. We'll reset our divisions here and wait for the next division, the next group, right? Bring in more. You look at the power bar, we've got a little tiny sliver of green missing. Maybe they killed 30 troops there. 330. So let's just roll right on with this narration. I think some of these battles, you guys have seen enough ass whoopings. You've already seen this initial vanguard get melted. We can move up aggressively here just to kind of speed things up too. We don't need these episodes to take forever. They do have a lot of archers, so we can sort of illustrate some offensive tactics here as well. It looks like most of their archers got out of there. Right, so how did we get to this current Charles III or something like that? He's like Charles III of England, or Charles III of Scotland, and Charles the VII of England, or some shit like that. All the bullshit aristocracy. It's all made up anyways. But they came to power because the English did not want to be Catholic. Now that process happened over a long time, and what I mean by that is for hundreds of years, the English people were very happy Catholics. Pretty much everybody was, because it was dangerous to not be, right? It was this unifying faith. It was very important in an age of like the Crusades, where you had huge wars of religion. It was important for law and order, right? Even to this day, religious moral application is beneficial for a lot of people in society. In other words, it gives them a nice playbook of how to go through life. Don't kill your neighbor. Don't cheat on your wife. There's a bunch of things. I obviously don't know my religious commandments very well, but there's a lot of religion that does give people a moral foundation for life. I'm not going to try to pass judgment on it one way or the other, because we're trying not to offend people any more than we already fucking do on the channel. Back then, though, there was no choice, right? You were Roman Catholic. You were free to be Roman Catholic. Somebody rolled that guy up. We'll have to slow-mo that guy getting mangled. You were free to be Roman Catholic, or your soul was set free because you were lit on fire. There was no choice, right? And they did that for a bunch of different reasons. There was all kinds of revolts and chaos. Otherwise, you even had to go to church, right? And what I mean by that is, if you didn't go to church, you might get fined. You might get whipped. You might get put in the pillory. There was no tolerance for that shit back then, and they certainly didn't tolerate people being anything. There was no such thing as atheism, at least not open atheism. You were not free to be a Muslim. You were not free to be a Protestant. Of course, Protestantism developed in the 1500s, and of course it comes from the word they're protesting. They were protesting against the Catholic religion. Well, Henry VIII's separation from the Catholic Church, changing the English Roman Catholic Church into what we now sort of call the Anglican or the Church of England, that process was mostly because they wouldn't give the guy a divorce. I imagine today there's a decent chance England would still be Roman Catholic, kind of like Spain and a lot of other countries where it's still embraced. Had they given the guy a divorce. Anyways, many years after that, the Stuarts move in, and the Stuarts were not fans of what we consider sort of parliamentary control or parliamentary, we'll call it interference, right? You had a parliament in England for a long time, and I'm not going to go into the history of that because this episode would never end. But the Stuarts didn't really want to negotiate with a bunch of other pompous English lords and whatnot. They wanted to be absolute monarchs. In France, during the same era, roughly contemporary with like Charles II, James II, Louis XIV was just basically telling everybody what was up throughout all of Europe, not just France, but they were taking over all kinds of spaces, all kinds of border towns. They called it shit like the Spanish Netherlands back then. And that the kings of England, Charles II, James II, they wanted to be more absolute monarchy. They didn't want to have Parliament basically approve all of their decisions, right? They wanted the purse, they wanted all the power that they didn't really have under the rules prior to their arrival as kings of England. Well, it wasn't that big of a problem, right? That was a problem. Of course, they did kill, Charles I, right? Charles I was son of James I, and he was executed because he essentially went to war with the people of England. There was a civil war. It was very bloody, and ultimately he lost. He was executed, right? The English people did execute their own king. That was when, anyways, we better not spin off into another side story on that. But by the time James II took over in the late 1680s, they were really trying to push absolutism. In other words, the king was in charge. Nobody will give us an alliance. I just don't understand it. So I'm still trying to... We can do a trade agreement. Here we go. Let's do a trade agreement. I don't even know what this means. I wonder why we can't be allied with anybody. Maybe we have to be at war with who they're at war with, right? I would love to be allied with, I don't know, somebody on the other side of us, the Khazate or the Southern Empire or somebody like that, because then we can start having multi-nation wars. Now, we might have to disband a lot of our army. Otherwise, we don't even need help, right? We just smash our way through without allies or something. We're going to have to figure out something on the balance side for that. But James II wanted to be more of an absolute monarch like Louis XIV, and he also was Catholic. Now, it wasn't a problem in England until he had a kid. He had a wife that died, and he did not have a kid, but then he remarried a younger gal, and they had a kid, and they had every intention of raising that kid as a Catholic. Well, England by then was no longer Catholic. They were firmly Church of England / Henry VIII's sort of Reformation of the Roman Catholic Church, and they weren't having it. There was a huge long series of violent struggle between the Protestants and the Catholics in England and other countries. And the English people by the late 1600s were anti-Catholic. They fucking hated them, right? Papists, they called them, and shit like that. And again, I'm not passing judgment one way or the other. I'm just telling you the history of it, right? These sides were bitterly against each other, and there was all kinds of plots, right, to blow up the Parliament building and to kill so-and-so and to replace him with a Catholic head and stuff like that. All kinds of Catholic plots and stuff like. People were very suspicious in England in the late 1600s, kind of like a lot of Western civilization was over communism with the whole Red Scare in the 1900s. So James II was like, nah, I'm going to be in charge, I'm going to rule, and I'm going to have a Catholic child, and they will rule and take over in my place and be a Catholic, and this nation's going to go back to Catholicism. Well, the Parliament, which was becoming more and more powerful, said, nah, we're not going to let you do that. We're going to contact our good old friend, the Prince of Orange, right? William of Orange, I think his name was. He was king of, I always get this part wrong, king of Denmark? I better have it right if I'm gonna put myself out there and have hundreds of people make fun of me. And he was a Protestant. And they said, look, why don't you come to England? We will give you the throne, right? Conditional. We'll give you some rules. You can be a constitutional monarch here. Just bring an army and remove this guy, James the second, the dipshit, right? Get rid of this guy, and you can take over. A little dark beer raider for this guy here. I figured that's right. It's for bitter draft, right? And he did, right? He basically landed on the English shore with a huge army, and James II ran. Well, long story short, after that, William did not have children, and so the English Parliament said, look, from now on, we're just going to be in charge, basically, of the king and queen. Here's how it's going to go. We're going to give the king and queen to who we want. We're going to skip over all the other legitimate potential people to replace the king, and we're going to decide, right? And they chose this Sophia of Hanover, just some random gal. Okay, we got Regaia is declaring war. This might be an opportunity here. Let's see if this is the opportunity we need. So we're both at war. The Southern Empire and us are both at war. Here we go with the Northern Empire. So we get to finally make an alliance in this campaign. Hold all that, the history stuff. Of course, there's nobody to decide with, so we just get an alliance. All right, here we go. So I guess that's as easy as that. We're allied with the Southern Empire. Sweet. We're both at war with the Northern Empire. Do we want to resolve? Okay, so here we go. Call to war. So this is the first one of these I've done in a campaign. Let's see what it looks like. Oh shit. It's a giant number, and I've seen this, and I've been worried about this. But you know what? That's pocket change for us. We can do that shit. So this is what this does. Is this basically we're paying the Southern Empire to declare war on the Western Empire. I don't know why it says High King Vorard Bitterdraft. This motherfucker thinks he's the king. We're in charge. But we're paying about a third of our money, and now look at that. Regaia is at war with the Western Empire. We basically just we bribed her, right? We sent some money, we bought her, and now the Southern Empire, she's on board. Presumably, we could have her attack other people. I don't really know how to do that yet. We're still learning this system. So interesting, right? We're going to start getting some coalition battles here. The Southern Empire is now on our side. We're allied with the Southern Empire. We're at peace with the Battanians, so our Western front is secure. And frankly, you would not want to be our enemies at this stage, right? The Western Empire and the Northern Empire have a reckoning in the next couple, 3 episodes. Why do I know that? Because we're rolling around with an army that's smashing everything to pieces. And now the hot Empress just allied with us, right? Woe be the foes that get in the way of us soon, right? We've got this new player clan. He's got kind of a cool dragon for a clan thing, right? He's got some clan members in here. Let's see what he's got. Right? You can't see what they look like till you meet them. But we're moving right along with this campaign. Now I want to keep this little subpar history lesson going here. But I also don't want these episodes to be 4 hours. When I ramble on like this and I'm caffeinated, I will fucking talk to you guys to death. Thank God I have a YouTube channel where I get paid to talk. So I think what we'll do is we will break up the episode right here. We're going to start to head down to the Western Empire. We should have some new battles, some new landscapes, some new foes, and maybe some multi-nation wars. It's going to be interesting how that develops. So all the normal things I'm supposed to say here, right? You want to subscribe. Do you want to see more from this? We'll call this a blitz campaign. You want to subscribe, hit notify. That way you know when new episodes come out. I'll try to make 2-3 a week. I'm going to make another one right after this. In fact, we're just going to keep on recording and do a little bit of editing, and you guys will barely notice. Please hit that like button on the way out. I really appreciate that, fellas. It brings more guys to the channel. That way I can talk them all to death. And with all that said, I will see you friends next time.